Alright, today we're going to be looking at the second part of plants. We're going to start talking about reproduction in plants. So the plant's life cycle is going to go from diploid to haploid, and then, or diploid to haploid, and then back again. So here we got a little plant life cycle. Here's our spore, forms a gametophyte, egg and sperm. They come together. When the egg is fertilized, forms a zygote. Then back to sporophyte. And back to reproductive cell formation. So spores are used to create gametophytes. And those are just the structures that produce gametes. More familiar to you would be in angiosperms. Gametophytes and angiosperms are flowers. The gametes, which are the sex cells, come together to form a zygote. A zygote grows into a sporophyte. And the sporophyte produces spores. Here's a complex picture over here on this side, kind of showing this process. But if you simplify it, here you've got your flower. Flower gets fertilized. Or here we have our pollen grain landing and pollinating part of our flower, producing a fertile cell and a seed growing to adulthood. They've shown your red is the haploid parts of the journey, and blue is the diploid parts of the journey. So this is for you just to get an idea. You can look at the picture and start to get an idea of how do plants reproduce. So plants can also reproduce asexually. You might have seen this if you've ever done a cutting of a plant. So you can cut a basil plant at the stem and put that stem in water, and it's going to reform roots and regrow a whole plant. So that's asexual reproduction, where you're just creating a clone of the parent plant. In the picture, they've got examples. Strawberry puts off runners, so you have the main parent plant, and it puts off a runner. It's just a clone of the parent plant. It's got the exact same genes and DNA as the parent plant. That could also happen with an onion bulb or a potato plant. And at the bottom, it just shows examples of how animal cells could asexually reproduce. So the second way that plants can reproduce is sexual reproduction. For sexual reproduction, you need two parents. You need sperm, which is pollen for the plants, and the egg. When they come together, they form the zygote. So the picture here on the right, similar to the one two slides back, where you've got basically just the reproductive cells of a flowering plant, and how the pollen and the egg come together, form a seed, and then how that seed's going to get germinated and start a new plant. And now we've got the flower parts. So we've looked at flowers before and we dissected them. You've got the petals and sepal, and those are going to be the parts of the plant, parts of the flower that are going to attract pollinators. The stamen's the boy part. It's the part that's going to produce pollen. At the very end, you've got the anther that produce pollen grains by meiosis. The pollen grains develop, or the individual pollen parts develop within each grain, and that's supported up by the filament. And so that long, thin structure could blow in the wind, scattering pollen. If a large mammal's walking by the flower, it might brush up against the animal's leg, scatter some pollen onto its leg, which can get released later to another flower. The girl part of the flower is going to be the pistil. The stigma is the very top of the flower part. That's where the pollen grains are going to stick to. Then it's connected with a long tube called the style, and that's where the pollen grains are going to travel down. and at the base it's got the ovary, and the ovule is where the eggs are produced. Actually, I want to go back to this slide. So you're going to want to be able to draw the parts of the flower. So at this point I would pause the slideshow and draw out and label all the parts that you see here on the left. Be able to label all of these on your flower part, and then just press play and come back in for the next slide. Okay, so by this point you know that you have in your vascular plants you have seed-bearing vascular plants. So in the seed you have an immature plant. It's called a cotyledon, and that's the structure that stores the plant food, and then there's a structure that stores the plant food called the endosperm, and the seed coat. So those are the three plant parts within a seed. They have to be dispersed by different methods, so you're going to see a variety of adaptations for seed scattering in plants. You've seen like the little helicopter that you can drop and it spins like a helicopter blade. With the seed scattering, if seeds fall directly beneath the parent plant, then parents and offspring are going to be competing for resources and sunlight. If there's a way for seed dispersal, it allows for the parent plant's genes to be transported to another area, and then there's not competition within the same family for sunlight or resources. Germination is the process by which a plant grows from seed. Begins when the seed takes up water and swells. Then the seed coat breaks open, and here we go on the right. You've got your picture of your seed. First part to come out is that newly forming what will end up being the plant's root structure. Then from that, the plant's going to grow out. The leaves are the first leaves are going to start to break out. All the while it's growing here, it's using the food that's stored in the seed to grow from, and then eventually after that seed shrivels and falls off, it's going to start to use those initial leaves to start doing photosynthesis. And if you want to click on the link over here, I've got a picture of a seed sprouting, time-lapse video of a seed sprouting. And that's it for plant reproduction.